What is going on, YouTube? Tarik LaCour, Andrew Miller from Hook'emHeadlines.com and the Hook'em Horn Show. We are coming back at y'all today with an update on Texas's kind of current status in fall camp. How things are looking. A couple of weeks remaining until the regular season opener. We're through two fall scrimmages, two of two fall scrimmages. So, um, you know, compared to how I usually feel about the second fall scrimmage coming up, just given the injuries that have occurred for Texas in the last couple of weeks of fall practice, I think that most Texas fans were just looking to make it through this one without any additional injuries. I'll start by saying off the bat, we didn't have any new injuries from this fall camp scrimmage. The only kind of new news on the injury front was the coaching staff holding out Jake Majors from participation in the scrimmage on Saturday. It sounds like he was in a walking boot. It sounds like he's dealing with an ankle sprain from various reporting sources, and it sounds like he's still on track to be ready for the regular season opener. Mainly, you need him ready for week 2 against Michigan, though. So, let's start with this. What were your takeaways from? I could say the two fall scrimmages as a whole, but mainly this weekend.
Well, it was good to hear that the offense sounded like they were getting more in a rhythm, although it's hard to really tell if they weren't going full bore on things. So you have to wonder about that. But after losing your star running back for the season and then losing a very promising running back for the season, all you wanted to hear at the end was no one got hurt, and that's exactly what we heard. And if they're taking some precautions with Jake Majors has, uh, he's going into a true fifth year of starting at center. So he's a guy that you could stand to lose to see some other guys work out at that position. And it sounded like things are going well. I am interested to see does Quinn Ewers have a true go-to guy yet? But I think we'll see that emerge more when there's not as much rotation. Now things are going to get tighter. They're in the game planning, and we'll get to really see where we are.
Yeah, I mean, it was good to hear. I think on multiple levels that the secondary is doing extremely well. I think that was my main takeaway, not just of this weekend's fall scrimmage, but last weekend too. Kind of the takeaway from last weekend's fall scrimmage was that the defense had kind of won the day, and defensive line, edge rushers were playing well. Linebackers made some plays, and secondary came up with a few interceptions. This weekend, it didn't sound like there were any interceptions other than one thrown by Arch Manning that went off his receiver's hands. So, regarding quarterback timing, accuracy, getting the ball out on time, Quinn Ewers sounds like he had a really tremendous day. Trey Owens continues to impress. I think he's been really, really good as a true freshman in camp this year, and really just goes to show that Texas's quarterback room is just on another level talent wise. I still keep saying best in the country. And I don't have anything that makes me think that would have changed in the last couple of weeks here during camp. The running back room is kind of an elephant.
Imagine saying that during the Tom Herman era or the Charlie Strong era. Just shows you how night and day we are from where we used to be.
Yeah. I think you could make an argument that Charlie Strong has some of the most athletic quarterback rooms in the country, but it's nothing to the level of what we have now, obviously. And, one subject I did want to talk about really quickly, because I know wide receiver, we've talked about that a good bit this offseason just because of the turnover, but also, I guess turnover in a good way in some sense, because this is the deepest receiver room we've ever seen. And you're really going to need those skill guys at receiver to really have, like, you mentioned Quinn having that chemistry with someone and finding that true go-to receiver. But now with us being down so many running backs, he's really got to be on point with all of his receivers in the rotation this fall. And so, like you said, I'm going to be interested to see who he really meshes with here in the final couple of weeks, get that chemistry down before the opener on August 31st, DKR. So, running back, it sounded like, what was it yesterday? Jaden Blue, Trey Wisner had limited contact. They had the green jerseys on. So what am I saying? Limited contact, non-contact there. Jared Gibson and Colin Page were the two running backs that were still going full contact. Um, at running back, I've hypothesized different things of where Texas might go to fill the depth and just add bodies there. Um, I really haven't gotten your opinion on it yet, Tarek. We talked about it a little bit in the show last week, but um, you know, where do you think Texas goes? Do you think they try to ride it out with walk-ons, guys like Nick Sanders and Colin Page, beyond the three scholarship guys you still have, or do you think it's more focused on Niblett and Juan Davis? Me personally, I will say I think Juan Davis holds a significant role just based on what I've heard from his practice reps at H-back. I would be disingenuous if I said that was just my idea because it's been well established now. He's been getting reps there, but pass it over to you.
Yeah, I think that you should use your scholarship guys and use them in any way possible to keep, if Niblett's not going to get any run at wide receiver, but you still an asset that you can use in the backfield, then I say use him. Get as much speed on the field as you can. And the same with Juan Davis. If he's not going to be a regular part of the tight end rotation, then go ahead and uh, put him in the backfield, use him in as many ways as possible. I think that Sark, now that he has a Quinn in his third year, he can use a lot of different formations and signals that he hasn't been using before, and use every arrow in your quiver.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good time to have Sarkeesian's offensive like mind and all the different ways that he can scheme guys up because you got guys like Silas Bolden, Ryan Niblett, who you can get the ball to in other ways to kind of get some of those touches that you might otherwise be getting to one of your running backs, maybe in like a design screenplay or something like that. You got other weapons that you can be creative with to, get some of these touches, get these guys out in space and make things happen. Obviously not an ideal situation, but Texas right now working with the best that they got because you're down, one guy who was supposed to be your, I think, RB1 heading into the regular season with CJ Baxter and then Christian Clark, guy that looked like he was ready to take some early reps this fall, both unfortunately suffering season-ending lower body injuries here in the last couple of weeks in fall camp. On the offensive side of the ball, the only other thing I really wanted to mention was along the offensive line. I think you brought up an interesting point about Jake Majors and getting some other guys reps there because you got offensive line. I've heard it talked about a lot. One of the deeper position groups that Texas has going into the season. You got like 16 or 17 scholarship guys here. I think 10 or 12 of which are all ready to handle live game reps. Is there anything you want to see out of the offensive line for the last 2 weeks of practice that we maybe haven't seen already?
No, I think I'm curious to see uh, can the offensive line give you that push late in games to just run the ball and impose their will? Are they at that point yet? There were times they could do it last year, like you saw it in the Alabama game. And there were other times where it seemed like they just didn't have it. Yeah. So it's there. Now the point is, can you do it consistently? So that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah,
Because this is a very large offensive line. You have when you add Cam Williams to anything, it's very large. But then you add in DJ Campbell, who's a really big guy, Kelvin Banks. Uh, let me see, it's Banks,
Connor.
Connor, and see, I had those two almost flipped with Connor Robertson and Hayden Connor. That's why I was hesitating on the Connor part, but right, Hayden Connor, Jake Majors, excuse me. Okay, wait a second. You got Banks, Connor, Majors, and then why am I blanking on his name? Uh, D, huh?
Campbell,
DJ,
and then
yeah, right, Campbell. And then I was just talking about him, so I didn't blank on his name. And then obviously Cam Williams. So that right side of the line, you should be able to just push people off the ball. I want to see that.
yeah, and just from the perspective of how this first group is holding up right now in the last two scrimmages, I've been encouraged by some of the returns from Cam Williams. It sounds like he's been, you mentioned being able to seal the edge and just be a body mover in run blocking for some of these just big humans that Texas has in the trenches that Kyle Flood has made a mainstay recruiting the last few years. Like guys like Cam Williams and G Campbell, especially on that right side of the line. But Cam Williams, it sounds like he's been doing really good in these one-on-one blocking matchups as a pass blocker coming off the edge. I mean, he's having to go against what is the deepest edge room Texas has had under Pete Kwiatkowski since 2021 in his time here. And it's not just Ethan Burke. It's not just Barron Sorrell. You also got Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, even Anthony Hill as a guy that is like a hybridized edge they can send at Williams. And he's holding his own there. Iron sharpens iron. I think he's going to be looking really good heading into the regular season. We always talk about it. His one start against Kansas State last season when he didn't allow any QB hits or sacks. And, he's really just continued to develop as a pass blocker. And despite his size, even though he did slim down a little bit, I think he lost about 20 pounds since the spring weigh-in. So as a whole, Williams, I think, looking really, really good.
And still by far the largest guy in the team.
Well, Connor Stroh might give him a run for his money.
Oh yeah. Let's see. If he lost 20 pounds, well, he's like 6'7",
I think he was like
350 now.
yeah, on the last roster. I can check that just to be sure because I don't want to be mixing up my big humans here. But yeah, it's I think the one thing that I'm curious to see is it sounds like Cole Hudson has also been dealing with a little bit of a lingering injury in fall camp, but last weekend I should say this too, or this weekend scrimmage, second fall scrimmage. With Majors out, Cole Hudson was taking a lot of the first team reps at left guard, but they also rotated in and out a little bit with Hayden Connor over at center. Moving Hayden Connor back to left guard, they also got like Connor Robertson, Daniel Cruz, some reps here with the ones and the twos. And, it sounds like Connor Robertson's been doing pretty well. He's been kind of that defined backup center for the last couple of years. I have faith if he does have to play some extra reps in week one that he'll do well. And like you said, I think it's just valuable to get a lot of you're going to have to find this next center up. It's going to be a major position battle here next year as that anchor of the offensive line. So important for the chemistry and cohesion in the SEC. And you got to start getting some of these reps to find, who has the ability to start kind of molding into that role, if you will. Williams, man, I was off on that. Yeah, he's down all the way to at least I don't know if I believe that. I'll be honest that he's like that he lost that much weight, but he's down to 335 on the fall roster. So we'll see.
That's still huge.
It is.
But
it also goes to show how good a shape he's gotten in. I mean, he came on to campus, like 370, 380 last year.
I mean, you just need to be able to move and be mobile. So if he feels that's going to help him, and I think it will. I mean, you need good weight. You don't need dead weight.
True. On the defensive side of the ball, because I think there's a bit more to chew on right now with the defense offense just in discussion. I've been encouraged by a lot of the results from the deep. I think if there's either side of the ball I would have to pick that I'm like more encouraged by than I was at the beginning of fall camp, it would probably be the defense, just because you don't have you're healthier there. I feel like they've done really well in the last two scrimmages, and the two deep in most position groups looks, I think, more formidable and more talented than I thought it would be in a lot of groups, especially like defensive line, linebacker. Especially the defensive front looks like it's in really good shape, because I knew edge was going to be good. I felt like the secondary had work to do, but they've gotten better, it seems, this fall camp. Let's start along the defensive line, because I think that I feel better about the defensive line, a lot better than if you asked me that I would be like a 7 or 8 out of 10 confidence in the defensive line entering the season, like back in the spring, I would have probably questioned that line of thinking and that assumption that the defensive line would be in that good of shape as it is now. Like I said, about a 7 or 8 out of 10 in my book. I've been pleasantly surprised by like Alex January's progressions. Jermaine Lole sounds like he's been doing really well. And then even like Aaron Bryant and Bill Norton, I think these guys are going to be good, pretty good nose tackles. Aaron Bryant hasn't had a whole lot of discussion this fall camp, but he's been doing pretty well with the second team defensive line. And Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton sounds like it'll be a pretty good first team duo. Collins looks like he's going to have his best season yet. And Broughton, I gotta say, I think he's due for a career year too. There's been reports of him doing better as an interior run stopper. Always kind of been his weak point. He's always been a good disruptor, but kind of getting his strength up, evening out his frame, and really becoming not necessarily a better anchor because I don't think that's his role, but at least being able to take one on one and not give up his lane, not give up his assignment. So, what do you think about defensive tackle right now? Do you still have any concerns about it entering the regular season?
Well, I think I need to kind of just see it. I keep seeing, we saw flashes from Broughton, we saw flashes from Collins. Now we need to see the consistency. Now the same thing could be true, would be said of Sweat and others. So it's not that I can't get there, and I'm fairly confident in the reporting of what's been going on, but we will just need to see it. We'll need to see can they consistently stand up to the run. I don't expect them to be as good as Sweat and Murphy, and that's okay. But you need to be formidable because you're going into a conference where the game is won up front.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I'll turn the attention now to edge rusher because I kind of mentioned it earlier.
Now there, I'm not worried.
No, neither. Yeah, neither am I. Right now I think it's set. Barron Sorrell and Ethan Burke are the two starters. I figured that would be the case, but with Trey Moore coming in, all that he can do, I was a little like skeptical about what the rotation would be and who would be getting the most reps, who would kind of be those first guys out on the field with the starting defense this fall. But Sorrell and Burke have been getting the consistent first team reps there. Sorrell just gets better every year, gets bigger, stronger. I think this guy that potentially could be a middle round draft pick in the NFL next spring for 2025. Burke, I mean, dude's got all the like physical tools, length, ability in the world to become an early round draft pick next year. Just got to show it again, get better, and really, I think explode as a pass rusher this year. Colin Simmons, he's due for some early reps. I think he's going to make an impact this season, and Trey Moore. You even got guys like Finkley and Voshik, who you really got six guys in the edge room right now that are all solid. I guess my question to you, Colin Simmons, where do you feel like his role will be? And, are there any guys in this edge room that you also think might contribute or,
Don't forget Colton Bosick.
Washington? Yeah.
I think that the edges will be places that you're going to see develop throughout the season for different games. How exactly they will fit. If it's a more pass heavy team, I think you'll have different edge rushers, and if it's a more run heavy team. So I expect to see a healthy dose of Colin Simmons and Colton Vosick, who I think are probably the two of the better pass rushers on the team. But obviously, I'm a big fan of Ethan Burke, and I hope to see some of Ethan Burke and Colton Vosick to have the Smash Brothers, as I call them on Twitter, together.
Yeah. I think Colton's getting there. We're probably going to lose what, three, four of these edge guy, three of them to the NFL potentially next year. And so, you're going to have a lot of these guys that get reps this year, maybe later in the game or, that are second or third on the depth chart that, really going to have a chance to jump into a bigger role next year. So, really got to prove it this fall in the reps that they do get on the defensive side of the ball. Linebacker, again, I mentioned this earlier in the video. I've been pleasantly surprised about how good they've looked. Anthony Smith has been one that's been pinpointed the last two scrimmages as doing really well. You had a few guys at linebacker, younger guys that were able to get more reps with the first and second team defenses this weekend because you had guys like Anthony Hill, like Mo Blackwell, who's been dealing with an injury. Both those guys had limited reps because they're trying to keep all these starters healthy. Ty Anthony Smith, Leon LaFau have been doing really well in fall camp this year. I think LaFau's kind of that wild card among the young guys at linebacker. Gillette seems like they're keeping him at linebacker after trying him out at running back for a couple of practices. So that's something of note. But yeah, I mean, linebacker, I think you're going two or three deep at most spots. And, Hill's obviously the star here. Benda's your experienced sixth year guy, starter. Blackwell got a lot of experience too, but you got a lot of depth here. How are you feeling about linebacker heading into the season here in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think linebacker is in about as good of a shape as you could have hoped after losing a guy like Jalen Ford.
Yeah.
I'm very interested to see how Anthony Hill looks on his own, uh, where he'd been more of a utility guy last year. How is he going to translate just being the running the defense? Um, Dave Benda sounds like he's doing really, really good. Uh, I'm really kind of excited to see where Leona Lafau is because I think he's a big key to how you to how you're going to be able to integrate all of these pieces together. And as far as especially how you're going to be able to use Anthony Hill on the edge and still have someone very competent in the middle. And I really liked how he's looked in pass coverage the times he has been out there. So that
For Hill or LaFau?
foul.
Oh, LaFau. Yeah, I was going to ask you that for LaFau. I mean, it sounds like I feel like there's a lot of confidence in LaFau's ability to kind of find the ball, know where he needs to be, hold his own when he drops back into pass coverage. Do you kind of feel like he will be ready for maybe, let's say, 10, 15 snaps a game in these, kind of distinct packages, regardless of where they need him to be for the SEC?
Absolutely.
Okay. Like I said, I think he's kind of the wild card here where I do have faith in him, but I will be interested to see where the coaching staff is placing him, snap count wise entering the season, just because he could be a very big contributor and he probably is the future at middle linebacker, depending on what they do with Hill long term. But, like you said, there's a lot of different ways they're planning to use Hill, especially with the other weapons they got here with guys like Trey Moore, Colin Simmons, Ethan Burke. Like, there's some pretty just monstrous packages that have a lot of speed, that have a lot of athleticism, a lot of explosiveness that Texas has coming off the edge and at linebacker. Um, for the secondary, we complained, I feel like, a lot about the secondary late last year. And, I feel like as fans or media, whatever perspective you want to take, I feel like a lot of those complaints kind of went into this whole just rejuvenation, this kind of turning the page, if you will, for the secondary, where you got some new leaders stepping up, you got some young guys that are contributing, but as a whole, I really feel like this is probably the most cohesive secondary that Texas has had in the last few years, and probably the most experienced and athletic.
If we have this secondary, I'm much more confident in the Washington game turning out differently.
Yeah, no, very true. Because now you got Jade and Malik Muhammad taking some of the first team reps at cornerback, which that's a
Yeah.
formidable duo right there. Now, I've been a little skeptical of how they're using Jade at this point, just because like sometimes he's with the first team, sometimes he's with the second team. The safety rotation has been a continued work in progress, but I like what I've been hearing for the starting group in the secondary for the last couple of weeks, and even the second team has been doing really well too. Um, I have a question for you that I'm interested to hear your answer. So the first team's secondary this week in this weekend scrimmage, at least for the first few series before they started cycling and rotating to keep guys on a pitch count among the starters. The first team was Jade Barron, Malik Muhammad at corner. Your safeties were Michael Taff and Andrew Makuba, I do believe. Yes. And then your nickel was Jalen Gilbo. Would that what do you like that starting five at secondary? Is there, a different rotation you
I
have for
Taft reminds me so much of his safety coach.
yeah.
So, um, So he's one of those guys who just seems to always know what he's doing.
Um,
So I'm fine with that. I'd like to see Derek Williams in that spot. I would wonder how Derek Williams would look as a nickel, given the way he plays, because he kind of plays like a linebacker and certainly hits like one.
yeah.
Uh, so I hope to see him in that rotation a lot. But I think those safeties are going to rotate a lot. And I'm also interested to see how Jelani McDonald fits in that mix. But let's say we're rolling out against Colorado State and it's Taff, Makuba, Gilbo, Barron, Muhammad. I think that's I think you're in pretty good shape.
Let me ask you this, Gavin Holmes, do you think that you would give him more looks? What would you feel about Gavin Holmes at boundary corner and then, or sorry, Malik's at boundary corner, Gavin Holmes at field?
You're not taking Malik Muhammad off the field.
No, I know. I'm not saying that. Sorry, that was a mix up on my part. Gavin Holmes at field corner, and then moving Jade back to like safety or nickel. Holmes is going to rotate in, I guess, is what I'm saying. But like,
This is it. Put the best five out there, and that means that Makuba, Barron, and Muhammad need to always stay on the field in some form or another. You can figure out the other two. Put
yeah,
your best five, but with DBs, put your best five out there.
I would like to see Williams work more in as a starter. I will say by the start of like SEC play, just because I think he's so rangy and just such a guy that's just so well built, athletic for playing in the defensive backfield in the SEC. So but I mean, obviously, those are going to be the top three guys with probably a good helping of Jelani and even Warren Roberson.
And I lied about Taft. There's a big difference between Taft and Blake Gideon. Taft doesn't drop interceptions.
I figured that we were going to have some shot at Blake Gideon from what you were saying off that. So,
Yeah. Well, look, Blake Gideon, look, the two things can be true at the same time. Blake Gideon was one of the best safeties to come out of Texas in the last 20 years. He was very good, always knew what he was doing. I don't judge him by that drop from Texas Tech. Hey, everybody, even great players make mistakes. But yeah, but we're never going to quite forget that one.
yeah,
Um, but no, I mean, but as far as Taft, I mean, Taft just makes plays. He looks like he shouldn't be making the types of plays he did, but I'll never forget when I first really caught on to Taft was in the state championship game when it was Austin Westlake versus South Lake Carroll, where he
oh,
picked up Quinn Ewers a few
yeah,
times. And the way he did it, I was like, how did he? I remember I was watching it with my wife. I was like, how did he do that? Because he looking like Michael Jordan the way he was jumping up and hitting the ball up and catch. I was like, wow. And then I thought like, why isn't Texas recruiting this guy? And then fair, I was like, okay, well, I was very perceptive, I guess.
yeah. I mean, I remember thinking that because I think his three offers were from like Ivy League schools and Rice, and so
I think at that game they mentioned he was committed to Rice.
yeah,
Uh,
he might have been, and
Starting at Texas. So
shows you the wits and the IQ. But yeah, no, you're right. Just knows.
I think at I think it's safety IQ matters more than anything else because if you can see the play as it's developing, you can really help yourself out as far as getting in the right place because you're going to have the most time to get in the right place because you're the farthest from the ball.
Right.
You're not corner, it's a little different.
No, very true. So, okay. I think that we've had a good kind of high level conversation about position groups with the last two fall scrimmages kind of in the books and looking forward to what remains. For I would imagine a slower pace last 2 weeks of preseason camp, more precautionary. Again, you want that intensity and you still want to hear good things about the cohesion on both sides of the ball, the confidence, and really getting these guys where they need to be. But also, especially at running back, man, you can't be losing any more bodies there. So, and you got Michigan week 2. You got to be healthy as you can be for that at this point. I want to turn the attention now before we get going here To recruiting. I think I said before we hopped on that I didn't think we were going to have time for this, but we have so many just big decisions, top guys, top priority recruits in the next couple of weeks that we'll be announcing. Texas really needs to land some of these guys, especially key positions like secondary, offensive line, wide receiver. Today Texas lost commitment of four-star defensive back Kate Phillips, flipped to LSU. So you think of a guy like five-star athlete, safety recruit from Galveston Ball, Joan Williams, that you really need to land now. Um, I want to go through and I want to get your thoughts just at a very high level of if you feel like these are like must-win recruitments for their respective positions. Just again, because I think some of these commitments coming up are just so vital for Texas. So, starting off on Wednesday, we got five-star offensive tackle Michael Fasusi. I want to put this one in context a little bit. He has been trending toward Oklahoma. Bill Bedenbaugh's really done a nice job in that recruitment, and OU's really invested a ton here. Uh,
We're probably going to get Nick Brooks, so I'll just call that one a wash. I think Fasusi's probably better, but I think Brooks has that type of talent.
yeah, and size. um,
Oh yeah, he's another Cam Williams.
yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking is like Fasusi is more of your not I don't think he's quite that immediate impact guy, but he kind of is your Kelvin Banks of this class. And then Nick Brooks is more of the Cam Williams, where if you get just Cam Williams, that is okay. But also, if Texas can somehow flip the script here and get Fasusi on Wednesday afternoon, that would be huge, obviously. Because I still think they can get both Fasusi and Brooks, but if they get just one, that's fine too, because you've got a lot of young, talented offensive tackle that's still going to be good for a long time. And you got John Turntine in the 26 class. If you don't get Fasusi, I think that actually helps you with Turntine's recruitment for 26. The next one after that is Nick Brooks, because that's August 23rd. God, there's so many coming up. I think Nick Brooks, am I fair in saying that Nick Brooks is the must get at this point in context?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think he's the guy you have to getting like elite offensive tackles is it's like getting an elite quarterback. You're only probably going to be able to get like one every other cycle. You're probably not going to be able to stack them back to back to back unless you're Nick Saban and Sark, you're not there yet. So yeah, that if you get Brooks, you have a guy who's really good, and that should last you for now. And the fact is, you just don't have one of the big selling points is Fasusi wants to play early, and while you can tell Fasusi he'll be able to compete, the starting track for being left tackle at Texas next year isn't quite as open as it would be
Yeah,
for
he would have to beat out
Oklahoma.
Tuesday and Baker, and that's a tall task to say the very least. Because you don't want to be promising something to someone, and then you have another guy jump in the portal that you don't want to
Yeah,
leave. So
exactly.
yeah. Next one after those is there's two on. There's so many coming up. I'm trying to sort them out in my own head. Uh, Next Saturday, I don't know the particular times, but we'll start with five-star athlete Jonah Williams. I think at this point, whereas before his recruitment kind of gone back and forth, each team had kind of had their turn to be like the trendy pick in the recruitment. Um, I think Texas right now at least has like a slight edge with Williams, just in terms of what's been reported recently from his recruitment. I think at
He's the
this
guy.
point, Williams.
He's the guy. I simply I don't know what to think of where exactly he is.
Do you say that mostly because of the direction of the recruitment, or kind of that like the threat of him playing baseball instead and going to the MLB draft instead of sticking to football? Kind of that concern.
He seems to be sometimes to like what he likes best is the place he was just at last.
Yeah,
So I never really know what to think in those situations.
that's fair. So would you characterize him as a must get, or you just think there's too much uncertainty?
With the flip of Cade Phillips, I would say yes.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. The second one on Saturday is an interesting one now because of the timing of the Kate Phillips flip today is three-star Ruston uh, cornerback Aiden Anding. He'll decide on Saturday between Texas, LSU, and Arkansas. I posted about this on the site today with his announcement. I don't know where this is trending. I don't know if this is going Texas's way. There's still a few more days. I think this could be decided, but this one might also be going LSU's way. Um,
That wouldn't shock me. They seem to be trying to, close out the guys are in the area and making sure they keep those guys home. So that wouldn't surprise me.
yeah, cornerback recruiting's in a tough spot at the moment.
Hmm.
I don't really know where you go from here this fall, but we'll see. Anding was kind of that last guy you were going after, unless you're going to try to flip Phillips back. And I don't think that's going to happen, though. I don't see any way that happens. Guys don't usually end up doing that. Okay. Jamie French, August 30th, five-star wide receiver from Jacksonville Mandarin High School in Florida. There was some back and forth with, Miami and LSU really throwing everything they could at his recruitment, uh, NIL, late July visits, kind of in-state pressure from Miami, LSU with some of the recruiting momentum they have right now. You heard some things about, this kind of the territory, if you will, of, which school had a lead or who had to make up ground. It kind of evened up, and it seemed in early August, but Texas seems to have weathered some of the competition there. I feel pretty good about them landing French. And then, you get French and Lockett in the class. Even missing on DeCorian Moore, I still think this is a major success in wide receiver. I mean, to get 2 5 stars, two of the top three guys you had on the board, that's
Yeah, and I don't think with Moore it's completely out of the woods yet, but yeah, I agree. I think we'll get French. So this will be a pretty good couple weeks for recruiting, and then as the season, I think at the end of the season you'll get a few more tailwinds.
yeah, true enough. Yeah, I mean, you're going to get someone from somewhere. You just where does that come from?
Florida's starting to recruit well again, which surprises me.
Yeah,
They're the state of the head coach. So if he if he's fired, then everyone goes back on the open market. So very interested to see how that one works out.
yeah. I mean, Texas just offered a Florida defensive line commit, 3-star from Georgia, Joseph Mbachu. Guy just started playing football. Intriguing.
Maybe John Robinson will get in the portal and come back after he's
Yeah, I forgot he ended up back in Florida, just with all the Bo Davis stuff. Yeah. The only other one I'll say, Michael Terry. There's a good chance, 5-star athlete, number one athlete recruit in the nation. Sounds like he could decide before the end of August. Just don't know when, but
yeah. I mean, Texas on offense, I think is here's the problem with I think people on Twitter or people kind of looking at Texas recruiting. I think Texas's offensive recruiting is going to be pretty elite. Like if you can get Terry, who's the number one athlete in the country, you can get Lockett and French, who I think are two of the top five wide receivers in the country, maybe even top four, according to some sites. I think Lockett is like number two on a few.
for the 24/7 Sports Composite, they're both in the top four, I do believe.
Okay, right.
I cut out, had some connection issues with Tarik, so just wanted to wrap up the video right here with the recruiting conversation. You were talking about French's decision coming up on, I believe it's a week from a week from Friday, I do believe. He's got late August, deciding between Miami, LSU, and Texas. Pretty confident in Texas being the pick there. As I was kind of talking about with Tarik earlier, I think that Texas kind of weathered the storm. Miami and LSU both had pretty successful late July visits before the dead period last month, and kind of was starting to drum up some momentum there, cutting into Texas's lead. But I think ultimately Texas will be the destination for French. He's really had some successful visits to Texas. His June official visit went well, and The communication's been really consistent between him and Sark and Chris Jackson. And I do really think that he likes to fit at Texas long term the best. So like I said, I think that he'll end up being the second receiver in this class, along with fellow five-star Khalil Lockett. Michael Terry, we had mentioned. I think that was the last one we were on before the video cut out. It's right now it's between Texas, Nebraska, and Oregon. It seems like Oregon's kind of in third place right now in that recruitment. I feel pretty good still about Texas ultimately being the pick for Terry as well. Regardless if he ends up playing kind of tight end, wide receiver, I think Texas will be able to find a place for him. And I think it's pretty important to him and some of the people around him that he stays close to home. It sounds like that's kind of a big factor here. So, at least from what's been reported in that recruitment here recently. And then, you got some other recruitments that are going to go into the fall, specifically along the defensive line. You've had some recent offers sent out there. Three-star guys that are committed to other schools that Texas offered this week from the state of Georgia. And Texas really trying to dig into the southeastern United States and, get, I'd probably say 2 or 3 more defensive tackle commits at least in the 25 class before signing day in December. The most recent defensive tackle offer is 3-star Braxton Kyle, Rutgers commit. That was earlier today. I say that to say that, he's a recent Georgia offer. It sounds like Georgia's kind of his dream school, but he's the guy to watch moving forward. Also 3-star Caleb Bell, Arkansas commit. I did a piece on the site today talking about how he's planning to visit Texas this fall, along with Mississippi State and Arkansas for some game day visits during the season. He's someone to watch too, because I think he's the first guy that Texas, among these new offers, has set up a visit with for an actual game day visit this fall. So actually getting him to campus, making that big step in that recruitment, I think is significant. And he said he's solid to Arkansas, but he's still talking to 4 schools, NC State also in that mix. So I think Texas with Caleb Bell is going to be one to watch. And Bachu, just because we mentioned him earlier in the video, he's the other guy from Georgia that Texas has offered this week. He's a Florida commit. If for both Arkansas and Florida this year, I think those are probably 2 of the biggest hot seat head coach standings right now heading into the regular season with Sam Pittman at Arkansas, and then you got Billy Napier at Florida. Depending on what happens this fall, you can start seeing some of those classes start to fracture. Some of those guys reopen their recruitments if you do have some heat on the coaching staff and some turnover there before signing day in early December. So anyway, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to give a recruiting update there, just because the next 2 weeks, I think in terms of your headlines you're following, recruiting is going to be just as big a deal as the remainder of fall camp. And going into the regular season, recruiting's going to, mostly be wrapped up for the 2025 class, but you're still going to have some recruitments going into the fall. But a lot of these guys are going to be committed already. So, that's pretty much it. Again, I do believe later this week, Tarik, Shane, and I, and potentially Mark, who was on the show with us last week, will be back as well to discuss more of a season preview and dig more into what Texas is looking like heading into the regular season, our season predictions, all that good stuff. So anyway, for Andrew Miller at Hook'emHeadlines.com, Hook 'em Horn Show, that's pretty much it. Hook 'em.